So then let us begin. So I'd like to just take this opportunity to really sincerely rejoice in this precious opportunity that we all have. Clearly, we're doing something right. Clearly, we have imprints. Clearly, we have merit. So even just to hear the name Heart Sutra, I mean, phenomenal, right? So the difficulty for me is I would love for us, as we were going through it, to do meditation on it and all of these sorts of things. I'm just going to set up my video so I can see you guys clearly. Do meditation on it and just really sit with it and all of these things. But in a 1.5 hour teaching, we just don't have that leisure. So therefore, so that we know what we're going to meditate on in our own private sessions, and hopefully we all have the opportunity to come together and do retreats in the future on the very topic of the Heart Sutra, then I thought, I'm not sure how to proceed, so I'm open to suggestions, but I thought maybe to at least generate the understanding of what the Heart Sutra is indicating. And then it gives us some food for practice. And at the end of the session, I'd like to leave you with some sort of takeaway exercise that you could perhaps do over the subsequent week to get a taste of it. Because just leaving it, leave meeting, finished, not think about it until the next Monday, or for me, Monday, Sunday for you guys, doesn't really impact. And some of the exercises that I've scheduled throughout the month, I taught emptiness for a weekend course just yesterday and the day before. And one of the exercises I gave to them, and they had some reservation, hesitation, going, I'm not sure this is going to be any use, And the results, some of the adjectives were, it was surprising how beneficial it was. So just have a clear, open mind, open heart, and you're the boss, so you decide what you do. But if I could encourage you to practice some of these exercises, then things can really shift on a daily basis as well as a long-term basis. So that's my heart wish or intention or hope for us. Okay, so the Heart Sutra then, you would have maybe heard of the Heart Sutra for sure many times, maybe recited it many times, seen the mantra, Tayata, Gate, Gate, Para Gate, Parasamgate, Bodhisoha. We'll look at what each of the meanings of all of that is and all the, the intention behind this entire sutra. And basically, so what we're going to be doing is looking at the heart, or the essence, the most profound, important wisdom that we can generate. And this wisdom realizing emptiness of what? Not emptiness of existence, but emptiness of what? How things exist. So emptiness of how emptiness of how things appear to us exist, which it's not. So emptiness of inherent existence. Things appear inherently to all of our consciousnesses. They appear as if they exist in some sort of solid, fixed, unchanging, independent, self-establishing way, as if there's something coming from the side of the object, something coming, established by way of its own characteristics, some sort of self-existence. It appears that way to us. And when we don't analyze it or investigate, we get hooked up and caught by that appearance. And then in dependence on that, whether it be the way we see ourselves as very much self-established, self-instituted, self-existent, independent of, cause and conditions and paths, and being merely labeled by the mind. So when we hold ourselves like this and all other phenomena, our loved ones, our enemies, our objects of attachment, objects of aversion, then we run down this path of trouble. So in dependence on this erroneous way of holding ourselves and all phenomena to exist, because of entrusting in the appearances, believing the appearances as real, then what happens is we develop all this conceptualization going on, which, incredibly exhausts us. It's our own conceptual story behind things and the situations, the problems, the events of our life that wear us down more than the actual situations and events, So this whole mental story, this conceptualization, and then holding the self strongly and what's mine and my loved ones, and, you know, keeping at bay anything that's going to threaten or harm them, then we go down that path of generating afflictions. So attachment, aversion, jealousy, pride, all of the afflictions. And then in dependence on those afflictions, we then generate action. So whether it be actions of body, speech, or mind, the 10 non-virtues, whatever it be, action, just meaning like karma, right? So in dependence on grasping at a self, it to exist in an erroneous way, as if it was inherently existent, all this mental conceptualization, exaggerating, superimposing things, you know, qualities onto the objects that don't actually possess them. And then in dependence on that, generating afflictions, independence on that, generating karma, independence on that, these true origins, this karma and afflictions, independence on that, we perpetuate our suffering. And so once again, each cycle of samsara happens again and again and again throughout our day, many times a day, because why? We're holding things to exist erroneously. We're trusting in what appears as if it's true and valid, and being seduced by appearances to go down this path of cyclic existence. So the Heart Sutra is a way for us to try to navigate our way out of that. And so indirectly, it will look at things like the five paths. I've got the 4 learner paths mentioned there. Oh gosh, Michael, you're saying the course is 1 hour, not 1.5? Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Okay, that's a surprise to me, because I thought DB was 2 hours and this was 1.5. Okay, so we can stop at 12. Is that what you're suggesting? Yep.
It just depends on what everybody's, I mean, I just want to be mindful of the fact that some people may have come on expecting an hour. And so.
Yeah, okay. Well, I can stop at an hour. I'm surprised by that. So that must be my mistake in just assuming it was an hour and a half. So no problem. I'll just, you know, go through things quickly. So indirectly, it's going to be teaching us the paths by which we progress. And this is directed, this was taught, this Heart Sutra was taught during the second turning of the wheel. So it's really directed at what, you know, was basically to become the middle way consequence school of thought, the Prasangika view on emptiness, which is this lack of inherent existence. Very unique, considering all of the prior Buddhist schools assert inherent existence, because if it doesn't inherently exist for them, it doesn't exist at all. So this is a very unique position, very profound position. And indirectly, we'll be looking at the paths that the Bodhisattva would progress to navigate their way to full enlightenment. But mainly, explicitly, what we're looking at is emptiness. And so Nagarjuna said, those who do not know emptiness are not a basis for liberation. And so in this way, if we are not a basis for liberation, we're going to be one of those obscured ones that circle in the prison of existence, samsara, circle again and again, life after life, experiencing the various, you know, 6 realms of existence, from human, animal, and so forth. And so the import of these teachings is for those like us seeking liberation. So that's the key. All right, so that we're making it a Buddhist practice and all, we'll have to abbreviate our prayers because we won't have time to do them all. It would have been nice to have more leisure to do, for instance, the praise and invocation to Manjushri and this sort of thing, and really set up a beautiful base, a beautiful foundation, not only to receive the teachings, but to clear away the obstacles so that, you know, we've got fertile soil, so to speak, you know, by which we can plant these seeds and then nurture them, develop them, strengthen them, and then they can take fruit. Michael, did you have a question?
I just thought maybe we should toss it out. Do people want to go for an hour and a half, or would you like to say maybe an hour and 15 minutes, or is...
Yeah.
I'm always just trying to be mindful of the fact that many of us come from different places, and
Yeah,
we try to get our dharma time in, but we also have lots of other things, and
I understand.
we tend to say, oh, I got this 1 hour and I can squeeze it in, yay. And
Yeah, that's
so
okay. Why don't we just see what happens fluidly? I've got an idea in mind of where I'd like you to get to at this part of the Heart Sutra. I want to get up to the form is empty, emptiness is form, and stop there. So let's just go fluidly, and we'll aim for like about an hour, hour and a quarter. And then subsequent weeks we can discuss, because if we want to lengthen it to what I thought was the original time of 1 hour and a half. So there may have been a change in timetable. Maybe I've just had it wrong all this time and always gone over. All right. Thank you, Michael. So in that case, let's start off well. Let's do the praise to Manjushri and all this sort of stuff, because it's better that we start off well. And anyone who has to leave early and stuff, that's okay. They can maybe catch that portion later on the YouTube channel and things like that. Okay. All right. So let's bear in mind that, this is a precious opportunity. This is not just heading down the shops for an hour, or some of the other mundane things that we do, watch Netflix for an hour. This is something so precious. And so we should really bring that mind with great appreciation, because if we had this appreciation, if we really saw this as the key to become liberated, but not just for ourselves, to liberate all sentient beings, we would recognize with a great sense of humility that there is nothing more precious than we can be doing right now than serving sentient beings, and by serving sentient beings, serving the Buddhas and the upholding the teachings. So with that in mind, bring to mind Guru Shakyamuni Buddha. And, the whole purpose of, like Chandra Kirti said, Buddha Dhamma Sangha are for those intent on liberation. All of the teachings that Buddha Shakyamuni said, I reveal the path to liberation, but liberation itself depends on you. So everything's targeted for our benefit, to free us from suffering, to free us from true origins, karma, and afflictions, and the suffering we create in dependence on that. So with that in mind, with a deep sense of, heartfelt appreciation to receive the teachings of the Buddha on the Heart Sutra in such a condensed format as well, that's easily accessible, we can feel that we are in the presence of Shakyamuni Buddha. We can even feel that we are sitting at top of Vulture's Peak in Rajgriha, as if we are there at the time of the second turning of the wheel, in the presence of Shariputra, in the presence of Avalokiteshvara, and in our hearts all sentient beings, so that the purpose of our life is fulfilled in benefiting sentient beings. And so with that in mind, let us develop a renunciation in our heart, wishing to be free of samsara and all of its causes, true origins, karma and afflictions, and not just for our own gain, but with a sense of taking responsibility to free all sentient beings as well, and to bring them to the highest attainment, the highest level of abandonments of obscurations, Buddhahood. And then recognizing also that the actions we create and the objects, so even this very going for refuge is and ourselves, the action of going for refuge, the refuge we rely on, is totally empty of inherent existence. While it is empty, it is a dependent arising. And so we can rely on it. And so with the three principal aspects in mind, you may join me in going for refuge if you like. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. And so just to begin in a good way, let's recite the brief invocation and praise to Manjushri. And we can imagine when we get to the mantra, we might just do 7 instead of 21. But imagine, Guru Shakyamuni Buddha has, for instance, in this instance, transformed into Manjushri, and light rays, white in color, come and purify all the hindrances, all the obstacles to actually generating the understanding of the entire path to Buddhahood, in particular, the wisdom realizing emptiness. And then, that nectar light rays can change to golden and establish those blessings in our heart. And so we can proceed in a good way. Obeisance to my Guru and Protector Manjushri, who holds at his heart a scriptural text symbolic of his seeing all things as they are, whose understanding shines forth as the sun, unclouded by defilements or traces of ignorance, who teaches in 60 ways with the patient love of his Father for his only Son, all creatures caught in the prison of samsara, confused in the darkness of their ignorance, overwhelmed by their suffering. You whose dragon thunder proclamation of the Dharma arouses us from the stupor of our delusions and frees us from the iron chains of our karma, whose powerful sword of wisdom hews down suffering wherever its sprouts appear, clearing away the darkness of all ignorance. I entreat you, O Manjushri, whose princely body is adorned with 112 marks of a Buddha, who has completed the 10 stages, achieving the highest perfection of a bodhisattva, who has been pure from the beginning. O Manjushri, O loving one, with the brilliance of your wisdom, illuminate the darkness enclosing my mind, enlighten my intelligence and wisdom so that I may gain insight into the Buddha's words and the texts that explain them. And we can do the mantra with the nectar and light rays, purifying and then bringing the blessings. Amarapasanadi, 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 Amarapasanadi. And so if we look at this Heart of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, so what we're going to find that this is the heart or the essence of, the entire Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, which are in various volumes in 100,000 verses, 25,000 verses, 8,000 verses, and then in a more condensed form, we can look at, in the most condensed form, we can look at these 25 verses in the Heart Sutra. And so all the meanings of the vast, the 100,000, the 25,000 intermediate, and the 8,000, the condensed, all the heart or the essence or the meaning of these is contained within these 25 verses. And so I'm going to look at it as we proceed under various headings. So just a quick introduction, you can easily work that out for yourselves if you want more information. And then the common prologue, which looks at the 4 or 5 excellences and the words that indicate them, the special prologue, which is unique to the Heart Sutra. And then what we see is that the Buddha blesses the minds of Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara. And then through the blessing of the Buddha, a dialogue will take place, and Shariputra will ask a question to Avalokiteshvara, who will answer it in a very brief way. So for those who are of sharp faculty and can realize very quickly just from the brief answer and the mantra, then that's in that format. But for people like us who perhaps need a little bit more detail to understand the essence and the meaning, then Avalokiteshvara expands on his answer and gives an extensive version. Then we meet with the mantra, Teata Om Gate Gate. Oh, actually, we often don't say the Om anymore. Teata Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhisattva. And then what will happen is the Buddha will show the aspect of coming out of meditative equipoise to affirm exactly what has been said, as it is like that, it is like that, and giving his approval, then recognizing that this is the way, the path to attain enlightenment, independence on the perfection of wisdom, and it's the path of all the past Buddhas, the present, Buddhas, and those of the future who will attain enlightenment. And so everyone rejoices in the fact that this is the way. So So the son of the Buddha, Rahula, wrote this verse praising the perfection of wisdom. And he says, the indescribable, inconceivable, and inexpressible perfection of wisdom, unproduced, unceasing, the nature of space, object of the uniquely knowing transcendental wisdom. To the mother of the victorious ones of the 3 times I prostrate. And so this verse is often recited before reciting the Heart Sutra. And, you know, we look at the words and we see it's indescribable, okay, inconceivable, inexpressible, unproduced, unceasing. And we start to think, well, hang on, does emptiness mean non-existence, that things don't exist? Are we throwing everything out, existence completely out? Like at the lower school, saying if things don't inherently exist, they don't exist at all. So if you assert lack of inherent existence, you're saying things don't exist. Are we falling down that path? And it's very far from that. It's exactly opposite to that. Because as this line shows us, object of the uniquely knowing transcendental wisdom, this is the object realized by those superior beings, the Aryas. The Aryas in meditative equipoise, they are non-conceptually realizing emptiness, realizing the lack of inherent existence, the absence of inherent existence, so that all that appears to them is only emptiness. And so, and then when they exit that meditative equipoise, everything appears once again as dependent arisings. So this emptiness, emptiness of what? Emptiness of inherent existence. Inherent existence doesn't exist, has never existed. But we're not stopping there. We're also saying that the meaning of emptiness is dependent arising. So if things lack inherent existence, how do they exist? How do they exist? By dependently arising, through dependence, in reliance on other, in dependence on causes, conditions, parts, and being merely labeled by the mind. And we can maybe have a look at those if we get time. So yeah, I'm just going to skip this slide in brief, but basically it's saying that, you know, emptiness can be expressed and explained, but it doesn't capture the exact way it is perceived by that Arya in meditative equipoise, realizing emptiness exactly as it is. So when you talk about emptiness exactly as it is, in that realization, that is beyond concepts, that is beyond words to express the actual meaning of how it actually is. So we can't get close to that, but we can, you know, make our way there to realize ultimate truth through relying on conventional truth, through relying on words and meanings and concepts and reasons and logic and all of these things. All right, so let's go to the Heart Sutra. Now, I prostrate to the 3 noble, rare, sublime ones. So as I mentioned, that this is the perfection of wisdom as taught in the second turning of the wheel. And it's likened to a mother because through independence on the perfection of wisdom, it gives birth to the Aryas. It gives birth to those who are the Sangha jewel, who possess the Dharma jewel in their continuum and have become a superior being, definite to attain their goal, so of liberation or enlightenment. And we're looking at it, even though it this wisdom realizing emptiness is necessary for those following the hero vehicle, solitary realizer vehicle, or the bodhisattva vehicle. So all the Aryas must have this to attain their goal. What we're looking at here is the perfection of wisdom, which is when it's supported by bodhicitta. Okay, so we're looking at it from the bodhisattva vehicle. Okay, so let's see. So yeah, whether you attain liberation or omniscience, either way, this is necessary. Whichever path you follow, this is necessary that one has this wisdom realizing emptiness of what? Emptiness of inherent existence. Emptiness, how do phenomena exist is what we're not saying do phenomena exist, we're saying how do they exist? We accept that we exist. We experience things, we have feelings, we're happy, we're sad, we're, you know, complex beings with thoughts and feelings and emotions, and we're seekers of happiness and so forth. So we're not saying we don't exist, we're looking at how we exist. All right. And so let's have a look. Now, this last paragraph I'll express with you. So the Heart Sutra is an inspired sutra. It's inspired because it's come about through the blessing. It's inspired by the Buddha for this dialogue to take place between Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara. And so because of that, it is actually regarded as the words of the Buddha, even though the majority of the words are not spoken by the Buddha personally. But it's through that inspiration, blessing the minds of these two disciples to engage in this dialogue, and that has come about in dependence on the Buddha, blessing their continua. And so for that reason, it is an inspired sutra, and it is the word of the Buddha. So it begins, and you might like to read it as well when we get to these parts in the gold verse, so that we complete at least a recitation each session of the Heart Sutra. Thus did I hear at one time, the Bhagawan was dwelling on massive Vulture's mountain in Rajgriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. So this common prologue, this is where we see the 4 or 5, depending on which text you follow, but 4 or 5 excellences that have occurred, and this is common. It appears in all sutras. And so here we're looking at an excellent time. Why? Because the Buddha was alive and teaching directly. So imagine that we ourselves are on, Rajgriha at Vulture's Peak Mountain in Rajgriha in India there, where hopefully many of us have been or will go again or will go in the future newly. But, imagining that we're there while we receive teachings on the Heart Sutra. And so imagine being in the presence of the Buddha as well, and just how incredible that would be. When we have pure karma, when we get to the great stage of the path of Mahayana path of accumulation, we'll actually be able to directly communicate with Buddhas. And so, all these things are highly possible once we purify our karma and accumulate some merit. So why also is it excellent? Well, not only was it an excellent time with the Buddha alive, but the teacher himself, Sangye, fully enlightened one, fully abandoned all that is to be abandoned, the 2 obscurations, afflictive and knowledge obscurations, and fully developed, expanded one's mind in all realizations. So even the Tibetan name for Buddha, Sangye, indicates in those 2 syllables exactly what to abandon and what to fully develop. So in this way, it's most excellent. The place, massive Vulture's mountain in Rajgriha, taken from the text here, excellent place. So yeah, that's been said enough on. Great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. So what does that mean? Well, present for those teachings were fully ordained monks, so Hinayana Arhats, and also bodhisattvas. So they were the main retinue. And sometimes a 5th one is presented here, excellent Dharma. And this is the wisdom realizing emptiness from middle way consequence school of thought, Prasangika. So it's common, this wisdom realizing emptiness, like I said before, it's common in the sense that it gives birth to all the Aryas. So one needs to have this wisdom realizing lack of inherent existence to overcome obscurations and attain liberation or enlightenment. Another way of looking at the excellent Dharma is some can look at it in the context of Mahayana Dharma, so focusing just on that bodhisattva vehicle. All right. At that time, the Bhagawan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. So here we find what we find here is that those present, the audience at that time, their roots of virtue, they were ripened. They were ready to receive these teachings. If you give teachings like this to people who aren't ready, they can quickly fall into extremes, which is a very dangerous path to go. So it's a challenge for us in this day and age, degenerate times even, I feel a bit uncertain sometimes about teaching emptiness to people who we don't know if they're ready. So certainly looking at emptiness with dependent arising, these two being synonymous, is so important, because things are empty of existing inherent existence, which means they are a dependent arising. So it's really important to keep emptiness and dependent arising together in our hearts when we think of emptiness, so that we make sure that we don't fall into wrong views. So at that time, the roots of virtue of those listening had been ripened for the teaching of emptiness, and so that it was really going to hit home directly. And this makes me think of ourselves and the conditions that we need. We need favorable conditions. We need like a massive merit. We need lots of purification. And the best way to accumulate merit and purify is in dependence on strong guru devotion. And so without these necessary conditions, not much is going to move. It's going to just be an intellectual trip, and the heart's not going to be moistened. The mind's not going to move in this softening way of being subdued by these teachings and making ourselves open to the understanding. Whereas if we have good, strong guru devotion and we cultivate that, and we have a good store of merit that we're constantly accumulating and purifying negativities, even just reciting the Heart Sutra helps us to purify negativities. But even Vajrasattva practice with the 4 opponent powers, all of these different things we can engage in. If we have this collection coming together of these wonderful conditions to support us, then even just like 3 words can just click one day, and suddenly like a lightning bolt sort of like, whoa, I never saw it like that. I never thought of it like that. That makes sense. And it can really touch us in a way that we start to generate some understanding. And so please don't underestimate these conditions. Some of us are a bit rebellious to this idea of guru devotion, thinking that, we're our own boss and we know better and all of this sort of stuff. But if we can move beyond that ignorance and arrogance and be open to infallible guides, then like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, then we are in good hands. So yeah, these roots of virtue of these people in the retinue were very ripe for this teaching. And so the Buddha's in this meditative equipoise and realizing non-conceptually the lack of inherent existence. And yet Buddha is always in meditative equipoise. It's just that to our maybe like common view or something like this, the Buddha will manifest arising from that. But remember from your studies prior, Buddhas can manifest many bodies, countless bodies. And so it can always be that Dharmakaya always in meditative equipoise, yet send forth to benefit sentient beings, emanations, the Rupakaya, Nirmanakaya, Sambhogakaya, this sort of thing. So what is this profound perception that the Buddha is meditating on? Well, the profound is it's deep, difficult to fathom. We're talking about the object being emptiness. So just as every subject needs an object, in the sense the object is profound, the object is emptiness, and the perception's pointing to the mind that's realizing. So this exalted knower realizing the profound. So we've got subject and object coming together here, the wisdom and the object being realized, the emptiness. Okay. All right. So absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena. So realizing all phenomena. So we'll look at the subjects forming the basis for emptiness as we proceed later in the presentation, maybe more in the path of meditation more so. But emptiness is without division. So the emptiness of my mind, the emptiness of your mind, the emptiness of a Buddha's mind, these are the same in the sense of a lack of inherent existence. And this I find very beautiful and inspiring because if my mind, the emptiness of my mind is the same as the emptiness of a Buddha's mind, then that means because my mind is empty, and thinking empty, you think dependent arising with it as well, because my mind is empty, it can transform, it can become a Buddha's mind, it can abandon non-conducive obscurations, hindrances, afflictions, negative karma, and so forth, abandon suffering. it can abandon these because these stains are adventitious, as Kedrip said. That means that they can be removed. They haven't entered into the very nature of the mind, and so they can be extracted. They can be like pollutants in water. They can be removed so that all that remains is the purity of the water. In the same sense, only they haven't entered into the ultimate nature of the mind, and so that remains pure. And so we too can attain Buddhahood. And so it's very wonderful recognizing that because our mind is empty of inherent existence, we can develop the path. We can achieve temporary happiness, happiness of future lives, liberation, enlightenment. And so these subjects forming the bases, that's where the divisions happen, not within emptiness itself, but the emptiness of my mind is one subject forming the basis for emptiness. The emptiness of Michael's mind is another. The emptiness of the Buddha's mind is another, and so forth. The emptiness of the phone, the computer, the vase, and so forth, like that. So, so different subjects forming the basis for emptiness. Emptiness is not something that exists out there, some sort of, universal type thing that exists separate and independent from the individual particular objects. So each phenomenon that can be known has these two truths. Its conventional nature that exists merely labeled by the mind in dependence on its parts, its basis of designation, but it also has that ultimate truth aspect, its emptiness. And if I was to destroy the object, the phone or the vase, the cup, whatever, then its emptiness goes out of existence as well. So these two are a single entity. One doesn't survive without the other. All right, so it looks like we're going to start to get into the actual sort of happenings of the sutra, having set the scene. And so this part here we can read together, and this is where the Buddha blesses the minds of Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara. Also, at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Notice the empty of inherent nature, because this is the qualifier to everything that follows. So rather than qualify every single thing that will follow on, when we say no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, rather than say, no eye that's, inherently existent, or, like this sort of thing, without having to put all of that together as no inherently existent eye, no inherently existent nose, and so forth. That would just take forever to say, but also there's not need, because we've qualified here that everything that follows is also empty of inherent nature. So not only the 5 aggregates, but we'll see every object, every sense power, every consciousness. We'll see the 12 links by which we enter samsara, 12 links by which we abandon samsara, the 4 noble truths, and everything like this, all phenomena. So here we've got Arya Avalokiteshvara. He's in meditation, the practice of the profound perfection. So the practice indicates he's manifesting not as a Buddha here, but as a learner being, someone on the path. In fact, a 10th ground bodhisattva. So is in meditation on the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom. It's the same meditation on emptiness, but he hasn't yet shown the aspect to us of fully abandoning the knowledge obscurations yet. And so he's meditating on selflessness of phenomena, that these 5 aggregates, 4 of which are mind, 1 of which is form. So in the 12 links, name and form. So name and form, name referring to the 4 consciousnesses, and then like feelings, discriminations, and so forth. And then the form being the form aggregate here, or like that. All right. So bear in mind that we're talking about ultimate bodhicitta here, which is an Arya. You've got Arya Avalokiteshvara. He's an Arya being because he's non-conceptually realized emptiness, not just conceptually with some sort of mental image. If we think of where our car is right now, or our bike, whatever mode of transport we use, we can bring it to mind and where it's located and all this sort of stuff, but it's not very vivid, is it? it's not vivid at all, because we're going through the medium of a generic image, and it's so unclear by comparison to standing directly in front of your car and seeing it in high definition like that. So with this Arya's exalted knowledge of meditative equipoise, you know, that's when they have this ultimate bodhicitta. That is the non-conceptual realization of emptiness without the use of a generic image. And what makes it this bodhicitta part, the ultimate bodhicitta, is it's conjoined with conventional bodhicitta. So we talk about the two types of bodhicitta. We could be referring to the non-conceptual realization of emptiness in the continuum of an Arya, Mahayana Arya being, a Buddha or a Bodhisattva. And the conventional bodhicitta is, we usually abbreviate it. If you want to know what that means, it's the two aspirations. We just shorten it like that. But basically it means for the welfare of all sentient beings. That's your primary drive. For the welfare of all sentient beings, I must attain enlightenment for their benefit. So this is what we're talking about here. Now, when we have this non-conceptual realization of emptiness, that's when it becomes this powerful antidote to be able to abandon obscurations from the path of seeing, path of meditation, and then having abandoned them on the path of no more learning. Okay, so that's just reiterating what I've said before, how basically the Buddha's blessing Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara to engage in the dialogue, this Q&A, by which there'll be a brief answer, then a more extensive answer, and then the Buddha will confirm and say, it is like that, and then everyone rejoices and so forth. So that's just reiterating that. So here we have Shariputra. He's one of the two main disciples you see flanked on most of the tankas and pictures of Shakyamuni Buddha. And he was actually very skilled in wisdom. So he's the one asking Avalokiteshvara, who's a Buddha in actuality, but is manifesting at the time of the Buddha as a 10th ground bodhisattva. So this is where the dialogue takes place. Shariputra has this question, so we can read if you like. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? And so here's the question. And remember, Buddha's inspired Shariputra to come forth and ask this question, generated that blessing in his continuum to ask. And he basically wants to know, how do you train? How do you train from the path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, path of meditation? How do you train in this perfection of wisdom to attain the state of a Buddha, omniscience, path of no more learning? So, so let's go on because time is brief. So now that we get to look at the path of accumulation and the path of preparation. So this is going to be the section, form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are all empty. That's going to be that section. And so this Mahayana, it's Mahayana, right? Mahayana path of accumulation. So we're talking about a bodhisattva. We're talking about someone who's developed uncontrived bodhicitta, this wish to attain enlightenment for the welfare of all sentient beings. And so at that point of uncontrived bodhicitta, they've become a bodhisattva. They've entered the Mahayana path of accumulation, by which they begin now over the path of accumulation and path of preparation to accumulate one countless great eon of merit. And so they're developing, they are developing the wisdom side. Things are not exclusive here, right? But they're primarily accumulating merit, developing the method side. And 3 stages of the path of accumulation, small, middling, and great. Necessarily by this great stage, they've realized emptiness, necessarily. And what they're looking at developing is this calm abiding and special insight focused on emptiness, to the point that it becomes a union of calm abiding and special insight. At that point, they will enter into the path of preparation. And so this continues over those 2 paths to accumulate one countless great eon of merit. And what they're focused on now with this path of preparation is really preparing for what? Preparing to go beyond the conceptual realization of emptiness, to become non-conceptual, to see vividly the emptiness, the perceptual realization of emptiness. And so they're repeatedly training in their conceptual realization to bring about that breakthrough into non-conceptual realization of emptiness. So they're mainly working on developing wisdom at that point. And so Avalokiteshvara is going to briefly reply how to practice a perfection of wisdom across the 5 paths. He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Sharavattaputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly, beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. So we see this also. So it's not just the emptiness of the person, the selflessness of person, how do I exist? Empty of inherent existence. So how do I exist? As a dependent arising. What does that mean? It means that I'm merely labeled in dependence on the basis, this body and mind. So if I was to search the body to find the I, this inherently existent I that feels so real, that is the creator of my suffering and perpetuating samsara, when I hold to it to exist inherently, independently, self-established, in the way it appears, I assent to those appearances, believe and entrust in them. And so if I stop trusting in my appearances and start to check up and analyze, seeing how I appear, this object of negation, then that's the key. We can't go past leaving that point out. That is just that's critical. If we don't, then we fall into nihilism. We're not negating an I that exists. This is so crucial. The conventionally existent I exists, but due to our imprints of ignorance, it appears back to us as inherently existent. And so what we're negating is not the conventionally existent I, that is the one who abandons obscurations and develops the path and attains enlightenment. We're not negating that. What we're negating is the inherent existence, this hallucination that covers the conventionally existent I. And it seems so real, as if I exist, and in the sense that I will be found if I search for it amongst my basis of designation. I must be the body, and if I'm not the body, I must be the mind. And we could even say I would be found as the collection of the body and mind. These are wrong. This is what does not exist. And so we undertake investigation of this object of negation, this inherently existent self. And we look in the basis, which is, the basis of a person is the body and mind. And so we look within the body, and, we say, I feel pain, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm walking, I'm sleeping, I'm laying down. We relate to the body with the I. And so we search within the body to try to find, where is this I to be found? And we look amongst each of the parts of the body, and we'll look at this in more detail soon. And then we find that we cannot find the I within the body. And we think, well, maybe it's a collection of the body, and still it is not found. And so we go, well, if it's not the body, it must be the mind. It's got to be the mind, right? So then we think, okay, well, maybe it's my present mind. But if it's my present mind, that means it's not my past mind. Well, hang on a sec. Maybe it's my love. Maybe it's my compassion, But if it's, once again, we find we can't be a part of the mind. We can't be a particular single type of consciousness or mental factor or moment of mind. And they would go, well, maybe I'm the collection of mind. But if I'm also not the parts of the mind, how can I be the collection of mind? And because the collection is just the parts, isn't it? And so when we look amongst all the causes and conditions coming together, and we look amongst the parts, the body and mind, even as a collection, we do not find a part amongst all of that is the I that's held to inherently exist. And so not only is the I empty of inherent nature and is therefore a dependent arising, this conventionally existent self exists. How does it exist? In dependence on causes, conditions, parts, and merely labeled. What we find is that the independence on the basis of body and mind, not finding the inherently existent I within that basis, what we do find is that the conventionally existent I is merely labeled in dependence on the body and mind. Venerable Rabina's got an excellent clip. It only goes for about 3 minutes. So I can give you the link. Otherwise, you can find it on YouTube. And it's wonderful. And it's about the looking for the I. And she says, you know, let's say you get a box from IKEA and you go through the box and you've got all the parts and the screws, exact number of screws and bits and everything to make a table. And you've got all the parts of the table in the box. But there's no part called table, is there? And all of it in the box unassembled like that, not functioning as a table, we wouldn't call it a table. So in the same way, it's only once, you know, all those parts have been put together and assembled and performs now the function of a table that we can label it validly that now there is the table. In the same way, if that box came from IKEA and it was a box that was going to be ourselves that we assemble, we would find all the multitude of parts related to the body and the mind. But it's like there's this extra little bit we will be looking for of where's the me, where's the I. If it's a box that's got our name on it, that's going to be ourselves in that box. Once we put together all those parts of body and mind, we would be looking for that I, because we hold so tightly as if there is this separate I-ness or me-ness, person separate to the body and mind. And so that's the object of negation. That doesn't exist. And that's why there is no part called table in that IKEA box. There is no part called table that exists in that box. Table is merely labeled in dependence on all those parts, not even just the collection of parts. That's already in the box, unassembled. That's not a table. But all those parts coming together in a certain way and then functioning in a particular way. And in agreement with convention, we all agree that that is the term we call table, not dog. And then it's very valid that we can label table on that. So not just emptiness of the person, but emptiness of the 5 aggregates, phenomena. And so what we're looking at here is the brief answer that what one has to do through the profound perfection of wisdom is meditate, not just once, not just twice, but repeatedly throughout the path, you know, all the paths. And path of meditation is to familiarize. So it's this repeated familiarization again and again and again, meditating on these 5 aggregates as also meaning not just the self of person, but even the aggregates, the basis by which we label the person is also empty. Not only is the self empty, but the basis is empty, the 5 aggregates, body and mind. All right, so let's see. Mindful of the time. Worth mentioning here, though, so these 5 aggregates, forms, feelings, discriminations, compositional factors, consciousness. These 5 aggregates are all empty. Empty of what? Empty of the object of negation, inherent existence. They are empty. Why are they empty? Because they depend on causes and conditions and parts. Therefore, they cannot be independent. So one word to hold on to is independent. If it stands alone, independent, it is inherently existent. That's the object to be negated. Opposite to independent is dependent. So if we refute independence, if we refute inherent existence, we are establishing that it is dependently originated, yeah? Now, it's good to do contemplation on this. We won't have the leisure in this lesson, sadly, but it's good to do contemplation on this around dependent arising and our utter preoccupation that we have with forms. So everything we interact with our eye consciousness, ear consciousness, taste consciousness, sense, you know, where we touch things, all of our sense consciousness is all highly driven by forms that we see, hear, taste, touch, and so forth. And we're greatly preoccupied with forms. And in dependence on this preoccupation, obsession with forms of just assenting to appearances of this inherent existence of forms, then in dependence on that, we grasp, we cling, we generate attachment and desire and crave and covetousness, and we're even in dependence on forms, someone we lust after, someone who we're obsessed with, we'll even go so far as to, engage in the 10 non-virtuals, sexual misconduct in relation to them. Or if we can't have them, no one can have them. Some people will even kill in the name of another person and so forth, another form, another person's body. If I can't have it, no one can. So, but even if we're not extreme like that, our relationship with forms is through just assenting to their inherent existence and generating attachment and craving and desire. So it's good to do a reflection, to see how we do cling to different sights and sounds and smells, or have revulsion to certain smells or sounds, this sort of thing, and how much time we invest in forms, how much time we spend online tracking down the actual thing we want that has the exact color we want in the exact size and all of this, or how we our rooms we fill with certain fragrances, how we fill them with, not just our rooms with incenses, and our bodies with perfumes and aftershave, and all of these different, ways of spending money to buy things that are fragrant, whether it be flowers or perfumes or scented candles or, room sprays, whatever. Or food is another form that we're constantly having this, relationship with, and never satisfied with the same thing again and again and again, but always seeking new flavors, new presentations of foods and so forth. So basically, the probably the biggest form that we're attached to isn't somebody else's body, but our own body. And so the way we cling to our own body, try to come up with all the different ways that we engage in this clinging, buying into appearances of things existing inherently as they appear, instead of recognizing form as empty, emptiness as form. So let's have a look at this before we conclude. There's probably a couple more, maybe 2 more slides, so maybe we'll finish around probably around the temper. I understand, Sarah, you have to go, and that's okay. So we'll just go for another 15, I imagine. So here we get to, remember, we're on the path of accumulation, path of preparation, yeah? And so this is what these verses relate to. Some will say just the path of preparation, does not matter. Many texts will go both of them. This is what we're habituating with. Form is empty, emptiness is form. So this form is empty. What we're firstly, what we're looking at here is the extensive answer. So we're looking at, we've had the brief answer from Avalokiteshvara. Now, if we didn't get it already, if we didn't understand the essence already to meditate on it, to attain a perceptual realization, then he's going to go through more elaborately an answer for us. So the sharp faculty would have got it in the brief and just the mantra that would follow. But for people like us, we need a bit more information. So remember, he's explicitly teaching emptiness, but implicitly it's the stages of the path. So we look at this fourfold approach. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. But what we're just going to look at today is just the two. Form is empty, emptiness is form. So form is empty. Empty of what? It's not non-existent, right? It's empty of something, empty of a particular thing. Form is empty of inherent nature, inherent existence, substantial existence, independent existence, empty of existing from its own side by way of its own characteristics. Doesn't matter what you use as your object of negation there in the Midway Consequence School, it's all coming down to the same thing, this independent existence. So yeah, form is empty. So form, how is it empty? It's empty because it is a dependent arising. It's empty because it depends on many causes and conditions. It depends on many parts. It depends on the mind imputing in a one-way direction onto form. There is nothing coming from the side of the object that tells us that it is form, that is found that it is form. The side of the object is the basis of designation. It's the parts all assembled and functioning in a particular way. And it's from the mind that has conceived of it to be whatever form it is, the body, the computer, whatever. It's the mind that's conceived it to be that and labeled that. So, iPhone never existed. The term iPhone never existed until it was conceived of, thought of, that this was going to be now labeled iPhone. And we all assent to that. We all agree that that is an iPhone, not an Android. So it depends on cause and conditions, parts, and being imputed outwardly by the mind, 100% outwardly, nothing coming from the side of the object that is found when searched for amongst that basis of designation that indicates its inherent nature, because inherent nature doesn't exist, and hence it's not found within the basis of designation. So form is empty. It is empty because we've just shown it is dependent. We'll look at an example of the body in the next slide to make it ring home more true for us. Because it is dependent, it is not independent. It is not inherently existent. Because it is dependent, it therefore lacks inherent existence. Lacking inherent existence is emptiness. So form is empty, empty of inherent existence. Why? Because it depends. Form is empty of independent existence. Why? Because it's dependent. You see where we're going? So form is empty. Empty of what? Of a particular way of existing. How? An independent way of existing. It doesn't exist like that at all. Form is empty of inherent existence, independent existence. Therefore, because it is empty of that, it means that that doesn't exist. Inherent existence has never existed. That's why it's empty of that. It lacks that. It's an absence of that. If we search for inherent existence self within the body and mind and the collection of and the parts of, we cannot find the inherently existent I within the body and mind. What we find is the lack of inherent existence, the absence of inherent existence. We don't find inherent existence. And so that's the emptiness that we're talking about. We find the lack of inherent existence. All right, so let's have a look at the second one, and then we'll look at them together in an example. Form is empty, emptiness is form. See how we're bringing the two together. So emptiness is form. So what we're saying here cannot be taken literally though, right? Emptiness, because things are empty, it allows for the arising of form. So we can say form is a manifestation or an expression of emptiness. It's not that emptiness existed prior to the form, and it's not that emptiness is a cause of the form. So this is why we can't take it literally. Emptiness is permanent. Okay. So, but it's because things are empty, which means they're dependent. Because things are empty, that things can arise, that they do depend. If they were empty, if they were inherently existent, I want you to equate that with, that means they would be independent. They wouldn't be able to interact with other. They wouldn't be able to rely on other. They would be independent of even being named. A baby would come out of the womb already known as Barbara without the parents giving the name Barbara. If Barbara was inherently existent, independent Barbara, she wouldn't depend on a name given to her by the parents. But this is an analogy which doesn't, and no analogy is perfect or accurate. Because if Barbara was inherently existent, she could not even depend on being in a mother's womb and the nutrients to sustain her and so forth. She would always have to exist in one particular way that was independent and not able to change or depend or transform or react and so forth. So because we're not that, we can change, we can develop lots of happiness, temporary happiness, future happiness, liberation, enlightenment is possible because we are not independent. So because things are empty of inherent existence, of independent existence, that means that things can arise and grow and change, that things, because they're empty of inherent existence, they can depend. They are related to other. Okay? So this emptiness is just a quality of form. It's the ultimate truth aspect to whatever form you see, hear, think, whatever see, hear, touch, those sort of things, taste. So the emptiness and the ultimate truth and the conventional truth come together as the same entity. You cannot have one existing without the other. They exist. Every object we see has both aspects, an ultimate truth and a conventional truth. So everywhere we see, and the way it appears to us, is the object to be negated because it appears not merely labeled by the mind. And yet, how it exists is by being merely labeled by the mind. So this form is empty of inherent existence. Emptiness is form in the sense that from within it being empty, because it is empty, it can arise. It can give rise to form because things are not independent. Things are dependent. All right, so if you take your body, for instance, as an example of the form, instead of the sights and sounds, we take our body. Think about all the many causes and conditions that came together for this body to be established that we have right now, me at 51 and you guys, however old you are. So we've had the fertilized egg, the sperm and egg of the mother and father come together and mix. So already this body is not mine, is it? It's the substance of the parents, but we already cling to it as mine, as if it is mine. But it's not. The substances is coming from the mother and father. So we have this fertilized egg and it undergoes momentary change. And then it develops into a fetus and then the body of a newborn and all the stages through, toddler and all the way through puberty, all the way up to the body we have now. It's dependent even in the womb on the nutrients of the mother and so forth. This body can't survive without water and only so long without food. All of these causes and conditions coming together for this body, which we see as so fixed and solid if we just take it on its appearance level. So think about over the next week, all the many causes and conditions that come together, even just for us to have this body. And then because it's dependent, right, on all these causes and conditions, here's the reasoning. Because it is dependent, it cannot be independent. Because it's dependent, it's not inherently existent. So the physical body is empty of inherent existence. Here's the reason why. Because it depends on many causes and conditions. So that's worth knowing and writing down and saying to yourself with reflection of the meaning. Because it is empty of inherent existence. It is empty of inherent existence because it depends. Okay. Or you could just say, if you want to keep it short, which doesn't go into the details, but you could just say this physical body is empty of inherent existence because it is a dependent arising. So it's worth learning the logic and reasoning behind these things because these are ways to bring forth correct understanding. So being mindful of the time. So if we look at the form aggregate having many parts, if you search from the tip of your head down to the toes, you search within the DNA, the atoms, the subatomic particles, or whatever the smallest parts within the body, the 36 impurities of the body, the different organs and so forth. If you search for that inherently existent I that appears solid, fixed, independent, concrete, the one that we protect and defend and will even kill for or commit non-virtue in relation to and so forth, then if you search amongst the parts, once again, you will not find this inherently existent self. You won't find the inherently existent body amongst its parts. So the physical body is empty of inherent existence. Another form of reasoning, because it depends on its parts. So it's this coming together of all of these parts, but even the collection of parts is not the inherently existent body. If we laid out on the floor this mess of all of our, internal substances, our blood, our bones, marrow, and all this sort of stuff, we wouldn't say there is the body. It's not functioning as a body. Nothing like that. It's just a pile of parts. The parts are not the body. Your car, separated by the mechanic into all its parts, does not function as a car. You cannot say all those parts laid out are the car. The coming together of all the parts, functioning in a particular way, in agreement with how we've labeled it, car. We can conventionally label it a car, but we won't find the inherently existent car existing ultimately amongst its parts, because it is nothing other than merely labeled by the mind independence on its parts, independence on its causes and conditions. It's a dependent arising. All right, so then let's go to the conclusion. So I'd like for you to, over the next week, if you wouldn't mind indulging in this activity, whatever you're doing, whatever activity, walking, driving, cooking, cutting food, bathing, the dog, the kids, whatever activity you're doing, as much as possible, try this experiment of bringing to mind the phrase merely labeled in relation to oneself, the I, whatever action you're doing, and the object in relation to. So, for instance, the merely labeled I, am merely labeled walking on this merely labeled path or road or sidewalk, whatever you call it. And just try that I would suggest a good thing is like even 10 minutes a day if you can. Or, excuse me, merely labeled I, and merely labeled eating this merely labeled food, or merely labeled I, and merely labeled laying down on this merely labeled bed, merely labeled watching, merely labeled Netflix, like this, right? So whatever you're engaging with, whatever food, drink, road, cars, anything and everything, if you can try to bring as much as possible this merely labeled, then what you may find is you get a very different sense of things. And if you do this, it would be even worth sharing your experience next week if you like. No, nothing's compulsory, right? But if you had an experience or a taste of what it was, and this is why some people on the weekend were surprised by its result. And doing it just for 3 minutes probably wouldn't get you that experience or taste, but doing it for 10 minutes or a daily even, then you start to get a feel for it. And I don't want to give away what the feeling is, because I don't want to influence your feeling. I'd rather you experiment and try and see what you think. Is that okay? Yeah. All right. So I think that's enough for now, because we're mindful of the time. So it'd be worth just where can I recitation? Oh yeah. If we can just conclude actually in these next 5 minutes. So don't be disheartened is what I want to say. Those with little merit, do not even doubt this teaching. Entertaining just a doubt tears to tatters worldly existence. So even just doubting, maybe things are empty. Maybe it is like that things are empty of inherent existence. Even that alone, a doubt moving in the right direction, right, is actually breaking down this very foundation of our individual cyclic existence. And so stay strong, develop good heart and courage to keep going, even if this has been difficult or challenging, or have assumed too much background knowledge, or have not been clear, because even generating just a doubt, maybe it is like that, can have this great effect. Let's finish the Heart Sutra and then go. So what we got up to was this form is empty. So we can continue. It's good to complete. Form is empty. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell on the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awakened to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Payata gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhisoha. If we had time to meditate on it, which we haven't, we would imagine Prajnaparamita at the heart of Shakyamuni Buddha and the mantra at her heart. And we could imagine these light rays going out, purifying all, as we recited the mantra. Just so you can hear it for blessings, I'll play it once with Rinpoche reciting it.
Taya atai om gade gade para samai gade boyade swaha.
So we could recite that if we have more time, which would be a great leisure. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasatva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasatva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you've indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharaputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasatva Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the worlds of gods, humans, asuras, and Gadavas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. So sadly, we don't really have much time for going through more leisurely and more slow and with more reflection and more Q&A. And so after we dedicate, maybe we can stop the recording and we can discuss how we can do it better next week as well. So due to this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of a Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And then for His Holiness, long life, incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be fulfilled. And then just this verse for the swift return of Lamas of Rinpoche, holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request. Okay, so yeah, I'm sorry I had to be a little bit rushed, but I thought there was no point stopping before getting to form is empty, emptiness is form, because most of us would really want to get up to that. And yeah, so what shall we do going forward, Michael?
I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
with us today, everyone, and for you, Venerable. Appreciate all your wisdom and teaching.